to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lena and I talk about sewing. I draft sewing patterns, I digitize my sewing patterns, I also create beautiful outfits. So today is all about this dress. So this is going to be a one part or two part video. So the first part is going to be about drafting the pattern and cutting, while the second part will be about sewing. Now for drafting the pattern, you don't need to draft the whole dress, you just need like a basic block pattern. So I did like the from the shoulder down to the waist and created a sleeve. Why for the skirt and for the flare I just did a little bit of calculation. So my choice of fabric is chiffon. Yeah, this is chiffon right here, but it's not your usual chiffon. This is like a thick chiffon, but I also lined it with a China liner just to give volume because this is 3 yards of chiffon fabric. So please subscribe to my channel, don't watch and leave. If you enjoyed the video, click on the like button down there. You see the like button, the thumbs up button. That will encourage me to do more and to post more sewing videos. So stay tuned, watch to the end, and let's get right into it. Get your drafting materials ready and your measurements, and let's get right into it. So on my pattern paper, I drew a line 1 inch on both sides, the top and the side of my pattern paper. I started by marking out my vertical measurement. I marked 3 inches for my neck because I wanted it to be fitted. While for my armhole depth, I marked 9 inches. My armhole depth is usually 8.5 inches, but I added half an inch to make it 9 inches, plus 1.5 inches for my shoulder slant. Everything summed up to 10.5 inches. For my waist length is usually 16 inches. I added 1 inch to it to make it 17 inches because I don't want it to look like a maternity dress. I want it to go down to my tummy so it doesn't give that maternity look. So 17 inches did the trick. Next, I drew a line across those points. So it's time to include my horizontal measurement. For the neck, I went with 3 inches because, like I said, I want it to be fitted. So here I omitted the first inch on my tape measure because I noticed that it wasn't accurate. So I just left that part out, which I'll be doing for most of this video. So I marked that on the length and on the shoulder and connected that point, then create my neck curve by adding few guidelines and just creating the curve. Next, I marked out half of my back width, which is 8 inches. I marked that measurement on the shoulder and also on my armhole depth line. Next, I connected the 2 points to create my armhole curve. Next, I included all the points necessary to get the armhole curve. So I started with my shoulder length. I marked 1.5 inches, then connected that to the neck. Then I got the midpoint of my armhole depth. I marked that and went in 1/4 inch. Then I marked from the armhole depth line up 1 inch. Then I got the quarter of my bust circumference and also marked that out. Then I created the curve using all those marks. Next, I marked quarter of my waist circumference and connected that to the armhole depth. So if you notice that I didn't include that because I don't think I need that, but if you need that, you can add your 1 inch that allowance and also create your that. I have videos on how to draft a buttocks block, so you can check that out and draft your buttocks with a dot. But yeah, I used the chiffon fabric and I don't think I needed the dot, so I didn't include that. To get the back piece, I'm gonna trace the front pattern. You can use the tracing wheel if you want before cutting out your front pattern. So I'm gonna mark 1 inch for the zip allowance. After tracing, I'm going to make adjustment to the neck and the armhole. For the back neck, I marked 1 inch length and created a new neck curve. While for the armhole, I went out 1/2 inch, then recreated the armhole curve. Next, I created a sleeve pattern. So the first thing I did was to fold the pattern in half just to get the crease line. Next, I rolled out 1 inch at the top of my pattern paper just to create a structure on the pattern paper. Then I marked my sleeve length. Sometimes I try to skip the first inch on my tape measure, and also sometimes I forget, so just put that in mind. At the length mark, I drew a line, then opened my pattern paper so I can also draw the line across. I also drew a line on the crease just to make it visible. Next, in order to get the cap height of my sleeve, I added the front and back armhole measurement of my pattern, then divide that measurement by 3. Next, I drew a line across. Next, I marked my wrist measurement. So there are 2 ways. You can either measure your wrist and mark that out, or mark your biceps and minus 2 inches. For this pattern, I'm going to be minusing 1 inch because I'm still gonna slash and spread the sleeve, so there's only minusing 2 inches. In order to get the width measurement of my sleeve, I measured the front and back armhole curve of my pattern, then divide that measurement by 2, then mark that measurement equally on both sides of my sleeve pattern. Next, I connected all the points, starting from the wrist to the width, from the width to the center point of the sleeve. Next, I divided the triangle lines into 3. Then the last point, I divided the line into 2. Next, I included some guidelines to create the sleeve curve. So for the front part of the sleeve, that's the first mark on the front part of the sleeve. I went up, that's outside 3/4 inch, while the bottom part of the front part of the sleeve, I went inside 4/8 inch. Now for the back, the first mark, I went up 1 inch, and the inside I went in 1/4. Next, I created my sleeve curve. So after creating my sleeve curve, I went ahead to measure to see if the sleeve curve and the armhole curve has the same measurement. So here I had to adjust it a bit, adjust the guideline a bit, because the sleeve curve is 1 inch more than the armhole curve. So this is okay, but I just wanted to just tweak it a bit and just to see if it can get a little bit closer to my armhole curve. To make the adjustment for the front part, I went up 1/2 inch, while for the back part I went up 3/4. So I just minus 1/4 inch from the measurement. Next, I marked and ruled the slash lines on the sleeve in no particular order. There was no measurement here. While for the front pattern, I ruled a line from the shoulder down to the waist. It's just the cut out line to insert my front ruffles. It's time to cut my fabric. I'll be using 3 yards of chiffon fabric. The chiffon fabric is not that transparent. Then I'll be lining it with a china lining, a green china lining. Then I'll sew with the creamy looking thread, then lock with the white threads. Then I'll be using an invisible zipper for the back of the dress, then an elastic for the wrist of the sleeve of the dress. I also start by cutting the lining fabric first. Then after cutting the lining fabric for the top, then we'll do little measurement to get the skirt part and the flare of the dress. While cutting out my pattern, I left half-inch seam allowance. After cutting out the front piece on the lining, I cut open the cutout line, so I'll be able to cut the front pattern as 2 pieces on the main fabric. To get the measurement for the width of the skirt, I measured the front and back waist, that is the width of the front and back waist. I'm using a 3 yards of fabric, so I don't want to go big on the gathering, so this measurement depends on the yards of fabric you're using. So I'm using 3 yards, so yeah, I need to manage my fabric. So what I did was to get the width of my waist, the front to back width of my waist. Then I put that measurement outside. Then I divided that same measurement by 2 plus 5. From my calculation, I ended up with 54/3/8. So I added my seam allowance plus my zipper allowance. My total dress length is 56 inches, so my skirt length is 30 inches plus the join allowance, that is joining to the top and joining to the flare allowance. So I included that. Same as my flare is 9 inches length. I added the hem allowance and I also added the join allowance, that's joining to the skirt. So you include all the allowances and cut your fabric. To get the flare length is easy. Like I said earlier, you just minus the flare from your total dress length, then add all the allowances. Why to get the flare width? So my flare width for my calculation is the width of my skirt plus half of the width of my skirt plus 10 inches. So now if you want to do more, if you want more gathering, this measurement depends on the yards of fabric I have 3 yards, so I just need to manage my fabric. So if you have more fabric, you can do your skirt width plus your skirt width. So if you have limited fabric like mine, you can do your skirt width plus half of your skirt width plus 10 inches. Then you add your allowances, that is your joining allowance, that is just 1 inch, I think should be for the joining on each side. That is all that is left of my fabric. So next video will be sewing and I will post that very soon.